I was led to the book of Nehemiah, and I've always seen Nehemiah as one of our lead development figures. Anytime I think about development, I think of Nehemiah. So for the next 3 mornings, starting today, we'll be looking at the first few chapters of Nehemiah, most likely from chapter 1 to 5. But to set us through, I'm going to start off with just chapter 1. And what I'm going to be looking at is more experiential from where I'm coming from, and use the 25 minutes that I've been given just to look at that, to look at Nehemiah. So I would want to start by asking somebody with an NIV to read for us. There are just a few chapters, a few verses. Somebody with an NIV, without reading my net Bible here. Can you please read for us? Nehemiah chapter 1. From verse 1 to 10.
The Bible says that the words of Nehemiah, son of Hachaliah, in the month of Kislev, in the 20th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Anani, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about.
I would challenge you to read on your own today, in the evening, and other times the other 4 or 5 verses, 5 chapters, because that's what we'll be looking at. But for today, for this first morning, I will do 2 things. One, I will start by doing a short introduction of myself, so that you have a chance of knowing exactly who I am and who is this person standing in front of you, or what has brought me this far. And then 2, I will be looking at portions of that first chapter, but specifically from the point of view of that personal passion, the personal passion, which will take us from Nehemiah to us in terms of what we are doing. In a nutshell, I grew up in Masailand. I was a typical kid herding goats and sheep until I was old enough to start herding calves, and then graduated to herding cows. And misfortune, when I was about 6, 7 years old, somewhere around there, I have no idea, 8, somewhere between 6 and 8, that age. My father passed on in one of those ethnic conflicts, which are so common among us, between us and others. And so we moved back to my grandfather's home. And I grew up basically in my grandfather's home. And one of those things where the government chiefs were moving from home to home, persuading families to take at least one child to school. And because my father had passed on, I was the firstborn, it was now very convenient for his younger brothers to have me selected to be the one to be sent to school. You have to know, right in the middle of Masailand then, I come from the Transmara side of Masailand here in Kenya. School was not the in thing. Okay, you want to grow up to be a warrior, as that is the pinnacle of life. But I then found myself being sacrificed to go to school. If my father had not passed on, I would not have gone to school. That you can be assured of. So I got sacrificed, I started going to school, and for some very strange reasons, I like school. I started doing very well. I started leading the class. Now, I'm not sure whether I was leading the class because I was smart, or simply because all the rest were not interested in school in the first place. So you can make up your mind on that one. But then something else happened when I was in 5th grade. I got an opportunity to live all the way out in Transmara and come to the city of Nairobi to go to a boarding school, which is for orphans and needy boys. It's called Starehe Boys, for the Kenyans here who know that. Now, this is a very special school, which was started up in 1959, and it basically takes in very needy boys and orphans. I found myself in the school, and I actually continued to do very well. So I finished primary, went on to high school. So for 9 years, I was in the school, and I was a sponsored child, as all the kids in the school are sponsored. I got sponsored by a company out of the country of Denmark. Now, cutting this short, after high school, I started working. I got involved with groups, the Navigators particularly. I was heavily involved with the Navigators right from my high school days, all the way after that. I became a Christian in high school. It took me a while to accept anything other than what I grew up with. I come from the family of Oloiboni, very, very strong, very solid, and that was part of my strong foundation when I came to the city. You couldn't really get me to accept anything other than what my grandfather used to tell me. Yet, I became a Christian because of my grandfather, who was not a Christian. In school, we started doing religious studies as one of the program I have. And I was led, we had a Catholic priest who was teaching us, focusing on the Old Testament and going through the rituals that you find in the Old Testament. And you find those ones, we were doing that like a literature book for purposes of passing exams. But the rituals that I found in the Bible were identical, almost word for word, practice by practice, of what my grandfather has been doing. And I've been watching. I've been an apprentice. So I would go home and ask my grandfather why this was the case. And I would ask the Catholic priest why this was the case. So I would play with the two. I'll go back and forth. So I actually got to read the Bible more than the rest of the students in the class because I was really curious. And I would go to my grandfather and we would start this long conversation. In the end, he was the one who would encourage me to pursue it even more because he kept saying, my grandson, we all believe in God. My very good Catholic priest would be saying, no, that is witchcraft. That is not really what God intends. But between the two, that is eventually what led me to give my life to Christ. And I teamed up with the Navigators, and I basically grew with this group called the Navigators. And after high school, 5 years into doing different things, very nomadic in nature. I think I did about 7 different jobs in 5 years. I left for the US and went for studies. I was very hungry for books at that time and did a first degree, did a kind of a triple master's, did a PhD. And by that time, I was so ready to come home. A week after my graduation, I was in the plane back home. That is a bit of my background. Just in terms of a very quick background, then I've done different things. I worked in university, Daystar University. I worked with the World Bank. All that for about 3 years. Was headhunted out of the university by Compassion International. And I've been with them for just about the last 16 years. Right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm actually on sabbatical. I took a sabbatical after 15 years of straight international travels all over the world. I was tired. And I felt that it was time to take some time off and really reflect. And for those of you who take care of cows, I just took time off and just went and be with my cows for the first 4 months. And did nothing else. Did nothing else but be with the cows. Even the phones, I put them on permanent silent. And would only refer to them in the evening, and if I need to reply, I did that. Sometimes we need to do that. So I am in that. I've been there for a whole 11 months. It's actually ending end of this month. And then I'll have to decide whether I'm going back to that office or something else. But I needed to take the time off. So this is where I am. This is where I'm going to start with you. And so now going to Nehemiah, I will start with you this way. When I started going to Starehe Boys as a very young boy in Standard 5, I was probably 13 or 15. Please know, I mean, you all know, I don't know when I was born. I have no idea of the month, the date, and the year. That I have no idea, okay? Just had to estimate, okay? To approximate. Now, as a young boy in Standard 5, going to the city of Nairobi, I had one of my relatives, brother to my father within the bigger family, who was very, very concerned. When his brother, Hanani, and the others came, he listened. He took time. He listened very intensely. And he responded. And his response was very, very clear. Generally, I ask the question, what do we do with the information that we're given? Somebody comes, gives us information. What do we do with it? And especially in the context where we work in. When these so-called strange, and I call them strange pastoralists, come to you with these very weird ideas, with this very strange information, what do you do with that information? How do we respond? How do we react? How do we react with the information that we are given? How do we respond? We have a situation here where Nehemiah receives information. He takes it in. Most important for me at this point is that he internalizes the information. He takes the information, he internalizes. It really becomes part of him. It's personal. He personalizes it. He weeps, he cries, he prays, he fasts. He takes this very seriously. It is part and parcel of him. Many a times, in what we are doing, it's just a job. And we just pass things around. It has nothing to do with us. I'm just in a job for 3 years. I'm just in a job for 2 years. I'm on a short-term assignment. It's just a job. It really does not reflect much of who I am. The challenge, I think, here for us, and this is where these pastoralist communities get misunderstood all the time. People come in to try and work with them. People don't understand the premise upon which they have come up. Their worldview is so different. And it takes the outsider, and I'm not talking about people coming from the West, their immediate neighbors, their agricultural neighbors, for them to actually understand the worldview of this pastoralist individual. So the question I think I'll be asking is, as Nehemiah took and internalized the information that was brought to him, to the point of him weeping, and then taking time to pray, to cry before the Lord, and say, what do you want me to do in this situation? How much of that do we also do in the works that we do, in the jobs that the Lord has asked us to do, the assignments that he has given us? How much of it is part of us? Or how much of it is merely a job? Just a job like any other job that you can come in as an accountant and you do that and you go. And I'll finish with this. At the end of it, he took the information, he acted on it, and more than anything else, he tried his best to be truthful. He talked to the king. He responded to the king. Yes, he admits. It was a bit scary. And I think you will see that in chapter 2, verse 5. He was fearful going before the king. But he still did. And he said the truth. Now, most of us have a challenge of how do we deal with that truth? It's best if I just didn't say this. Or if I say this, the consequences are something else. The consequences might be. Nehemiah gives us an example here where the situation is before him. The king has asked him a question. He could have responded in one of very many ways. He chose to say the exact truth as he saw it, as he felt it, as he knew it. And it was out of that the king was then able to allow him to do what he eventually did. truth, in a lot of what I have gone around, is in very short supply. For various reasons, truth is in short supply. And I'm hoping that as we gather around here, as we reflect upon the assignments that we've been given by the Lord, that truth will be one of our guiding principles. And finally, that we pray. In all this, and as you read through those 5 chapters, you will see every step of the way Nehemiah prayed. Among others is what I call the model prayer. That very short, very brief prayer, one of the shortest you can come across. Lord, give me favor before this man. I hope that will be our hallmark. We will then continue from here. I will go more into details on how we can apply this in our various work environment. Thank you very much, and God bless.